What's going on, squad? It's your man Unspoken Reviews, back again with another video, and today we are doing another review of Batman the Caped Crusader episode 6, entitled Night Ride. All right, guys, so this was a Gentleman Ghost episode, guys, and first and foremost, I want to say this episode definitely stepped up from what we had from episode 5. I was saying that I was glad they gave Batman a little bit more time to shine in episode 5, and this episode definitely stepped it up a lot more. It definitely brought those supernatural elements that we are used to seeing with the DC universe. It took the character on a different type of journey than what he's used to with the average criminal, and put Batman in a position where he had to seek help from outside natural forces. And I really like that. We know that Batman has kind of gone up against different types of enemies throughout the past and in comics and in different types of forms of media, but it seemed like this show was going to be a little more grounded. But it seems like it did kind of take those supernatural elements that we know with the DC universe and put them on full display in this episode. So the episode starts with two officers that are taking a large amount of cash for a charity. They are driving throughout the city, and they are attacked by a gentleman that looks like a ghost on horseback. He kind of looks like he's dressed a certain strange way, and he chases after this armored car, manages to shoot it and take it down. All the cash has been stolen. However, he seems to move in a bit of a gentleman-like manner. He's not much of a mean individual who's out to kill anyone. As a matter of fact, there is a female officer that is also making delivery along with the male officer, and he even gives the female officer a bit of polite banter and kindness, saying that he would never harm anyone like her. All the cash is stolen out of the back of the truck, and that is the beginning of the episode. And this is also our first introduction to Gentleman Ghost. Now, my history with Gentleman Ghost is not incredible. I have seen the character here and there throughout different types of forms in the DC universe, whether or not it was animated or in the comics, but I was never really obsessed with him enough to dig deep into his character. Nothing like Joker or Mr. Freeze. However, I did take time to read a little bit about him, and it seems that Gentleman Ghost is mostly part of the Injustice Society. He's usually an enemy of both Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and he seemed to have a lot of clashes with them in the era of the 1940s. So Gentleman Ghost is actually the spirit of a man known as James Craddock. So later we meet up with Lucius Fox and Bruce Wayne, and the banter between the two of them, it seems that as Lucius is talking to Bruce about the success of his company, Bruce has been reading about the ghostly apparition that has been going around terrorizing Gotham City. And it seems that in this discussion, I was able to finally come to terms with the idea that Lucius Fox does not know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. They're outside, and Lucius is talking about these big projects that he is working on and trying to improve the living arrangements in Gotham. And he also says that he notices that there is some untouched money that he keeps in a fund that he does not mess with, or that he has his own personal use with. And he tells Bruce that he's willing to bring him in and even help him out financially with it if he chooses to involve himself in the project. But Bruce says that he's not willing to do that. And it just goes to show that Lucius does not have any idea that Bruce Wayne is Batman. That was something that I was wondering every single time the character made an appearance somewhere. It seemed like he did just show up and help him at some really rough points that Bruce was in trouble. So we do get a B plot with this episode with Harvey Dent. He is struggling with the idea of his campaign. It seems that his aide is saying that he's struggling behind Jessup, and that he's having a hard time really getting people to vote for him and to support him in his mayoral campaign. So as he's leaving, he does end up meeting with Thorne, who is pretty much a criminal in Gotham City. Dent does admit that he knows that Thorne is usually mixed up with Jessup. However, Thorne does feel that Dent would be a better candidate than he would be, or a better mayor than Jessup would be. Dent is initially not willing to work with Thorne, but Thorne does say that he is still struggling to make a difference in Gotham, and that he will still need more money and more of a assistance with the press in order to make his name valid amongst the citizens of Gotham City. Dent still is unwilling to work with him. However, Thorne tells him that he will be waiting for his call, as if he knows that it's going to be inevitable. Okay, so later on the episode, after Batman is trying to figure out why this ghost apparition is attacking the people in Gotham, we do cut to Dent. He is on the Gotham train with several different civilians as well as the press, and he's talking about his desire to want to make life better for the citizens of Gotham. He talks about how people are struggling and how he wants to be a positive role model to give the people what they need. And we do kind of see from the citizens on the train, the words that Thorne was speaking do ring true. It seems that the people are not really impressed. And you see that it's all poor people. You see there are people that are struggling to survive in Gotham, struggling to make a living. You know, they're just on the down and outs. And they are the people who don't have much. And they don't really believe in Dent at all, even though he's out there amongst the people trying to talk up the positive outcome for Gotham. He's not really doing much to make people want to believe in him. And I thought that that was pretty interesting that they did this in this episode. So after this, that ghostly apparition is on horseback again, chasing after the train. He does jump into the train, and then he starts to rob all of the poor people, stealing all their money, taking everything and all their possessions. And it's very interesting because when he steals from the truck in the beginning, it took me a minute to realize that on the side of the truck, it says West Side Charities. And I didn't realize is that he was stealing from people who are less fortunate. So he does go around and he's stealing money from all of the people who don't have less, that has less than what the average person does. And when Dent tries to stand up for them and offer his money instead, the ghostly apparition says that his money is no good and that he will only take from people who have less than he does. And this situation does leave him with some fallout. He does get away. However, Batman does pursue him in the streets with the Batmobile. As he is chasing him through the streets, Batman does notice that there is a family crest attached to a pouch that is on the gentleman and on his horse. But before Batman can catch him, the ghostly apparition does disappear into the wall. Batman does check out some of the residue of the money that was left behind, but he's not able to deduce whether or not this individual is a real ghost or just an individual that is using smoke and mirrors to trick the people he's going after. So later on, Lucius, who is still working on his project to better the housing effort in Gotham, meets with a gentleman named Russell Crowe, who actually has the same family crest hanging above his building known as the Heritage Hill. So as Batman does go to a library trying to find information through Gotham City records about the family crest that he's found, he does meet with a woman named Wilma who did know his parents and knows him from his time of being in the library with his mother. And she understands and has seen that crest before, and that it does belong to a man named James Craddock and his family. That Craddock was an individual from the 18th century who was very rich but lost all his money in gambling, and instead of earning it back, he disavowed the Bill of Rights, not believing it to be anything of necessary to him, not believing people were created equal, and he started stealing money from the poor in order to fund his own life. However, he was caught by the police back then, and he was hung at the gallows for the things that he did wrong. So Craddock's spirit does attack both Lucius and Russell at the Heritage Hill. He does mention that he feels that Russell has disrespected their family by not holding up to the morals and values that the Craddock name does go by. He even throws kind of a racial jab at Lucius Fox a little bit. And it does make sense if the character was back in the 18th century. Race and bias were a very strong thing back in those times. And it does make sense that the character would give a racial jab at Lucius, saying that he is a wretch that does not belong there. Batman does appear, though. He does try to save them. He does try to take on the Gentleman Ghost, but he seems to be just a step ahead of him each time. He's moving around him. He's not even able to touch him. It's almost like he is moving like a spirit. And Batman does manage to land a solid punch on him, but his hand freezes from his contact with him. The ghost does disappear, but threatens him that if he attacks him one more time or gets in his way one more time, he will end up killing Batman, and Craddock does disappear. So along with our B plot, we do see that Dent is dealing with the fallout of the train situation. It seems that media is now switching up the narrative and claiming that he didn't do anything to help the people that were on the train, which is incredibly interesting because he did have press there that saw him try to stand up to the Gentleman Ghost and give up his money But it seems that the story is still being spun that he did not do anything to help defend the people or stand up for them. And it seems that the press is now ripping through him, and he is now struggling more with his campaign than he was before. And we do get the iconic naming of Gentleman Ghost at this moment in the episode, where Batman and Alfred are both talking about the possibility that a spirit could actually exist. However, Batman still doesn't believe that, but Alfred gives him the idea of who he could talk to, who could give him some answers about that. So Batman does go to a store and he meets up with Linton Midnight. And I wasn't aware as I was watching the episode, but I did remember the last name, that this is actually Papa Midnight. Now, Papa Midnight, I have seen him in different types of forms of media, but mostly what I'm used to seeing from the character is from the Constantine movie starring Keanu Reeves, that I think came out in 2004 or 2005. It's a pretty old movie that still gets a lot of credit in the DC universe to this day. I do think the character did appear in the Constantine show. I didn't watch much of that, but I do know that Papa Midnight does usually have dealings with Constantine. I know the two of them are usually rivals. He is a Haitian voodoo magician. You know, he does have his own dealings in the supernatural elements of the DC universe. But Batman does go to him looking for answers to how to stop a spirit. And at first I thought, you know, even through the episode, a part of me was just trying to figure out if Batman was going to find out that this was all smoke and mirrors and that wasn't true. However, Midnight does give him information on how to actually take out a spirit. And it seems that Batman will need the original deed of Heritage Hill as well as the blood of a nobleman. So Bruce does manage to get his hands on the deed. He manages to break into the Gotham City records and take a 400-year-old deed for Heritage Hill. And Pennyworth offers up his blood as he has heritage to a nobleman. So as the two of them are going through with the ritual, you know, they do try to burn the deed in order to take out Craddock, but he does attack Batman and Alfred. He does put Batman down for a minute. Batman can't seem to get the edge over him. Batman does call him out for his hypocrisy towards human beings, but Craddock does say that human beings aren't created equal, not at all. And Alfred is still trying to burn the deed. He does manage to get it to burn. There is still some traces of blood that are left on the deed, and the deed is still not completely burned out. It seems that Craddock's spirit is burned up, but his ashes still kind of remain in the air, and he attacks Batman, but Alfred stands in the way to try to save his life. And I like seeing that, you know, that father protective mentality of Alfred, how much he really does care about Bruce, not just, you know, working for him as his butler. He stands in the way and he ends up becoming controlled by Craddock's spirit. So Alfred does start attacking Batman, trying to kill him with one of the batarangs. And as he's doing that, Craddock does goad him by telling him that Alfred is keeping a secret from him that he can't seem to get past, that he is keeping locked away in his mind. And that he's saying if he's keeping this secret, he more than likely is trying to keep it for Bruce's sanity or his protection. Alfred does come to for a moment and tells Bruce that he's going to have to kill him in order to save him or stop him. And Bruce immediately says no, he's never doing that. They do end up fighting more and more, and Batman does notice that the deed is still sitting there, but with some traces of blood on it. He manages to shoot the deed and destroy it, and that takes the spirit out of Alfred. And then he uses the small tube that Midnight gave him, and he manages to capture the spirit inside of it. And he does kind of chastise Alfred for, you know, putting himself in danger like that. And you kind of see the struggle with him and saying that I can't do this job without you. But I think what he's really saying is that he wouldn't know how to move forward without Alfred in his life. And that does make sense. Alfred is the only real father figure that Bruce Wayne has had in years since his parents' death. And it kind of shows that Bruce is still struggling to really tell Alfred exactly how much he means to him. And it kind of shows their relationship a little bit and the struggle that Batman has releasing those emotions. We know that Batman has never really moved like that. It's been very rare that he's moved like that, but it was a pretty cool scene to see between the two of them. Midnight is waiting on top of the hill, and Batman does go to meet up with him. He does say a boon for a boon, which is what Midnight said to him earlier when they met, that he actually wanted Craddock's spirit. And it's a pretty interesting thing when Batman hands over the vial to Midnight, you can hear Craddock screaming that he does not want to go with him. It is very scary to realize how much One, he does know who Midnight is. Midnight and Craddock do have somewhat of a relationship, or they have crossed paths before. And it does make sense. If Midnight is in the supernatural elements of the DC universe, he would know these rogue spirits and have his dealings with them. And it makes me wonder exactly what he's going to do with that spirit. Batman even does ask him that, and Midnight does tell him it's better for both of us if you don't know that information. And it's like, damn. And I think that's kind of interesting, seeing that there are other dealings that are going on in this universe than just Batman taking down the bad guys in Gotham City. It kind of makes you wonder where they can go with different things throughout the universe. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing a supernatural show with the DC universe. It's something that we need. I think there are a lot of characters in the supernatural realm that need to exist. I know we've gotten the live action Constantine stuff. I would kind of like to see characters like Hawkman and them move around in the DC universe and have their own shows. I know they're not really popular in the comics, but I would honestly like to see that. So after this, we do see that Dent is struggling with the fallout. He seemed to have dropped about 15% in the polls with his campaign against Jessup. And you see that Dent is really frustrated by this. He even throws something against one of his pictures, and you see that it's cracked around his face, just kind of showing that ominous foreboding of him becoming Two-Face later on down the line. And Dent picks up the phone, he surrenders and calls Thorne and is willing to hear him out about how he can help him move forward in his campaign. All right, guys, so that was my review of the episode. Overall, I definitely like this episode compared to the previous episode. I thought it was a good episode. It had a lot of great elements in it. Kind of put Batman on more of a personal level, as well as him and Alfred. I like that. I'm glad we're getting there. It seems like we're kind of ramping up. We're getting that B plot also with Dent, seeing how he's dealing with trying to become the mayor of Gotham City and his eventual turn into Two-Face down the line. But it was a pretty good episode. I like the supernatural elements. I like that we got out of the average street thugs that Batman deals with. I know that that's something that some people don't like, but I do like when Batman does dabble in different things. It kind of shows how much his character evolves over time, that he gets into this mode where he's learning more and more about different villains. He's learning more and more about how to handle different threats. He's studying more about how to become much more of an effective crime fighter. And I like that in this episode. And I'm glad that it kind of stepped up the personal beats for a couple different characters, not just Batman and Bruce Wayne, also Alfred, also Dent, also even Lucius Fox and what he's dealing with being, chastised for his race in this episode. I know a lot of people aren't really happy with the racial stuff and it feels like it's woke, but given the villain that we were dealing with in this episode, it pretty much made sense to me that we would hear that, okay? Gentleman Ghost is a character from the 18th century. He's going to feel that way about black people. That's the way a lot of people felt back then. So it made sense that we seen this in this episode. But that was my review, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.